Hello everyone and welcome to our first ever Rugby Nation. I'm Sean Maloney, this is Justin Harrison, that is Iain Payten. Pato, pumped to be here in the Ella Room. My only issue with how we get through the next 15 minutes, a preview of the world of rugby, is how we best utilise, get maximum minutes out of the guy to your right.
Well,
how do we work him into it?
Knowing how many stories he's got, 13 and a half minutes of Goog telling stories, go.
You know what, I'm in. Job done. The issue is, Goog, with you, is you've got a very sharp rugby brain.
Several issues.
Yeah, I know that. You've got a very good rugby brain, and also you're so dry, you know.
Yeah, well, I'll try to moisturise as regularly as I can, but it's just not working for me. The dry, pregnant snake look is working for me.
We'll poke you on the way through, pregnant snake, Pato, won't we? And we're going to kick things off. We've got a whole bunch of stuff to get through. We've edged past the halfway point of the week, and we can get into Tars taking on Sunwolves. We've got Reds up against the Rebels this weekend as well. Let's quickly recap the week that was. Tars too good for the Crusaders. What can we take out of that match, Goog?
I just think the Tars have got some combinations that are starting to work well. They haven't got so much throw and hope to their outside backs. And importantly, that set piece is working very well and setting a great platform. We all know the importance of possession in rugby, particularly Super Rugby. Every single breakdown is contested. Over 30% of tries are scored from lineouts. If you get that right, you're a big chance to put yourself in a good position.
I know you're a fan of the big defensive effort from the Tars against the defending champs as well last week, Pato.
I posted a tweet saying that whatever they're paying Steve Tandy, they should double it.
So he's the Welshman that came in, who worked
defence
for
coach
for a year, am I right?
He did, that's right. Yeah, he used to coach Ospreys. It turns out it's a fertile ground on Twitter. It's the most retweeted thing I've ever done. It was 170 retweets or something liked and retweets, etc. But
Sure.
They must love him over there in Wales.
Blister on your thumb.
Listen, I'm not a very popular guy on Twitter. So, yeah, look, super impressed with that defensive effort. They gave the Crusaders absolutely nothing. And, you know, we've talked about it in the past, is that one of the really frustrating things with Australian teams in general, even up to the Wallabies, is this tendency to shoot out of the line and try and solve a problem. But the Waratahs' discipline in defence was just fantastic. And, look, it was a wet night. The Waratahs had the luxury of a Crusaders team who were dropping a lot of ball, and obviously the emotional element was there with the unfortunate events in Christchurch. But that Waratahs defence, you can't take too much away from it. Forced the Crusaders into lots of errors, and look, if they can keep that in place for the rest of the year, Sean, I think that they're good things for the Aussie Conference.
The other thing that was really touching, Goog, in the lead up to kick off, Scott Robertson and Darryl Gibson, opposing coaches, former teammates, arm in arm to recognise that Christchurch tragedy and what had unfolded a couple of weeks earlier.
Yeah, look, I think that's the powerful message in the rugby family piece, isn't it? It's a global sport. We're all people in the end, and we sometimes forget about the human side of what's presented outside the arena as well as inside. So that cauldron of performance is certainly intense, but you've got to remember that there's real people committing real times of their lives to something that we all love.
So that was Saturday night. The Tars get home 20 points to 12 against the Satyrs. Sunday afternoon, I was up there at Suncorp Stadium for the derby, Reds v Brumbies. Low scoring first half, 10-0, but then the Reds powered home in that second term. Let's talk up that Reds performance. We'll come back to the Brums. What did you enjoy about what they did at the weekend? Queensland, Goog.
Oh, look, I think that what I'm enjoying at the moment is the energy around Super Rugby and the Australian derbies. And we're seeing swings in performance because teams are more consistent now, and you're starting to get test combinations playing against potential test combinations, and you have big swings in scores as a result. So the intensity of those derbies has gone up, the execution has gone up. Some of the teams are underperforming because of pressure. You never create something out of nothing. That's a bit of a myth. You consistently put pressure on someone to provide yourself with an opportunity to create something. So
Who did that on the weekend well for the Reds?
Oh, look, I think the whole team is starting to make some mature decisions as a young group in terms of rugby field hours. There are Super Rugby field hours. They're coming together now as a team that's making consistently better decisions under pressure without isolating any individual. I think it's unfair to pick out one or two players. Certainly that's what Brad Thorne's working on up there. Culture team before me and all those sorts of things that we put on the wall and don't really pay much attention to. So he certainly looking like he's developing a squad that is looking to perform on the field as much as off of it.
Two observations. I mean, talk about Brad Thorne's culture. He's put some heavy bets down on culture up there. He let go 3 very good footballers in Slipper, Carmichael and Quade Cooper. Is there a payoff coming for him? You know, that sort of game shows that there might be. Second thing, referencing the derby element, oftentimes we've seen though in the past, like they've always been intense, right? And you played in a lot of them. Yes, that it translates to really intense.
Seriously though, some of the this is after you kind of moved on. We went through a run there of about 5 years where they were just such a grind.
And we washed our hands of it, saying, "Look, Australian derbies,
they all know each other so well, all that sort of stuff."
What I liked about that one in particular was the Reds had the defensive nous at the start to hold them out for 462 phases, but also had the ability to get turnover ball and create some tries out of it. And my lasting memory out of that game will be Brandon Paenga-Amosa tossing a lovely long pass to the right to let Samu off. I think Hegarty scored at the end of that one. That's a great piece of skill.
It was. He was good at the weekend coming off the bench, Brendan Paenga-Amosa. They got a lot of punch off their bench at the weekend, the Reds. Let's just quickly touch on it again. Samu Kerevi, do you guys reckon he did enough on the weekend in that 12 jersey because Michael Cheika was up there at the weekend at Suncorp, to make him the front runner? Just wanted to single him out because he was good as a captain.
And you're right, and it's a question mark, that 12 spot in the Wallabies. Matt Tamur, Curly Bill have played there. Cheika likes that second playmaker element, but back in the day, we used to play, when we didn't have the luxury of a Timmy Horan, you used to play a couple of big boppers in the centres often, and you know, I noted that Rod Kafer, your Fox colleague, said he would pick Samu and Tavita as his centre pairing, and I like it. I'd actually throw him.
If Cave says it, it's got to happen, then, isn't it? I mean, he's the most knowledgeable bloke in the world.
Is that not just around rugby, just in general? Yeah. Game of Thrones too, he's mad for that. Looks a lot like one of the characters on there. We can touch on that a little bit later. Weeks to come, Game of Thrones coming back. Right now, let's rip into the Rebels, guys. I've got a note here saying that we can talk about what went wrong with the Brumbies, but it was quite clear very quickly the line out was a drama and handling errors were through the roof.
With the Brums?
They were.
Look, I think you know, Brumbies have clearly got some sort of focus on driving mauls. That's their go at the moment, that power game that the Sharks, Sharks used to play that sort of game, kick for the line, slow the game down, then speed it up. The difficulty I'm having is negotiating through what happens when that doesn't work, which happened on the weekend. The line-out wasn't functioning as well as it should have. Then the Brums went through 46 or 47 plus phases. It didn't penetrate the line or do anything all that creative. You know, creating something out of nothing is difficult, but we need to have one or two players in there that are going to create some sort of momentum, and the Brumbies just never got anywhere close on the weekend.
Yeah, one guy who was good for the Brumbies very quickly on the weekend, Christian Lealefano, tackled himself into the ground, a lot of cattle coming his way, and still was handy in attack as well, despite being a bit banged up. Lealefano went well. The Rebels, not so much on the road, dropped both games in the Republic. The one against the Lions is going to kill them because they led 33-5. Got run down 36-33, and then with that rested outfit at the weekend, down against the Sharks.
Yeah, and I guess that opens up the door to the question about resting entirely, Sean, and I know Goog isn't a fan. I'm not massively a fan either. I think when you're leaving, some of your good players out, your very best players really, when you're talking about the Wallabies, you're putting yourself at a real disadvantage. And are you going into a match fully expecting to win when you're not fielding your best team?
Yeah, I remember spring tours for the Wallabies was time to rest players from a full super campaign and domestic test campaign. Sharpie, Griggs, those sorts of blokes used to stay at home, and other players were given an opportunity, but they were good enough to play in a Wallaby jersey. It was important that we weren't using Test rugby as a trial method as well. I just question whether managing players through the year. We're all professional. We all know how to eat, sleep, and train properly. Some of us better than others, clearly, but managing a player is probably more the challenge than just resting them completely. And, we need those combinations playing together as much as possible.
Okay, so that's the perfect little segue into this week because we're missing three of the TAR's best. Fernie Foley, Dempsey and Adam Ashley Cooper rested for the game against the Samoas this weekend. Will that make any difference against the boys from Tokyo? That's
still a pretty strong team, though. You've still got Izzy Folau, and actually late breaking news, John Folau has joined the bench because Curtis Rona is out, so it could be a double Folau banger up there. Sunwolves, how are they going to respond? Who knows what Sunwolves team turns up? in all seriousness, like they have been very, very good and very, very poor in the space of 5 or 6 weeks. So they have the capacity to trouble the Waratahs. We saw that in Tokyo. I think if the Waratahs are fair income, they've got to do this and do it fairly comfortably. Again, we look to, can they replicate what they put on the field last week? If they're going to be title contenders, again, they have to. And these are the sort of games you can't be, you can't afford to be dipping down and riding the roller coaster.
Drop 3 of your best players in the team as well. It can't not affect the performance of what was a very complete performance with those 3 in the team last week. You take, a large percentage of your starting 15 out of the group altogether. So none of them are in the group committing energy or rhetoric around warm-ups or steering the ship through training. None of them have got a voice in this group this weekend, besides a slap on the back and cutting a few oranges.
Well, interesting. In particular, you've taken one of the central elements out in your tent. They've got young Mac Mason. Well, he's not that young anymore. He spent 2 years.
How many games do you play if you play every Super game and every test this year?
Every single game.
Yep.
It's a bit different this year because it's a World Cup, because it's a reduced rugby championship. But again, it depends if you win through the finals.
Generally, it's about 30. If you play more, I think Curly Bill played 30 last
That'd be
year.
about.
So what's the problem? 30 games. That's the CBA back when we were playing. That was the max amount, and then everyone said we're not playing more than 30. And then Captain Barbarian to ring up and say, "Man, I've got a handy game happening in Twickenham." And everyone go, "Oh yeah, I think I got one more in me." If you don't mind.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about here? Are we talking about English Premiership guys knock out nearly 40, and that's
But they
come on.
They do a workload management better up there, don't
Do
they?
I don't know. I've never sort of
Did you
managed.
get workload
I've never
managed?
worked hard. I've never had to be managed. I've had to be cattle prodded.
Okay, so that's Friday night. Saturday night, we've got the Reds taking on the Rebels at Suncorp. I'm pumped about this. We just mentioned how the Aussie rugby derbies have turned the corner. This is just going to keep that trend heading in the right direction, I reckon, guys.
They genuinely don't like each other. I love when you've actually got rivalries that actually mean something to the players. And you only need to look at last year when that. I think you were calling, Sean. You accurately predicted no punches would be thrown, but there was a skirmish, and some of the greatest set of crazy eyes I've ever seen in my life from Caleb Timu. He almost stared Angus Cottrell to death. But look, that's the sort of passion you want in a game, and throwing a bit of skill, and you got yourself a belter.
Well, skill, that'll obviously come from Gania and Cooper, who returned to Suncorp for the first time ever together to take on their former side. It was awkward last week because Slipper returned for the first time. And he's loved, the Reds guys love him. Samu Crevi refers to James Slipper as a big brother. This one's got a little bit more spice around it, though, a little bit more sprinkle of niggle, because I don't think it will come as any surprise that Quade was unhappy with not being able to play for the Reds last year. The man that prevented him from doing that was essentially Brad Thorne, and he's come out publicly and sort of had a couple of shots, so she's going to be juicy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how much damage Quade's going to do to Brad Thorne when he's sitting in row 58. And Quade's taking some traffic down in the centre field, but the challenge for Quade is to stay focused on what he's clearly done to date and mature as a man, and make sure that all that he's doing is providing what he can do for the team before he starts taking on some sort of personal battle. Of course, when you get spat out the back end, look, getting selected in a team in the end is one guy's decision. And it was one decision by one bloke against one other person. So we've got to not get distracted by that, and Quade Cooper needs to realise the long goal here is to get back in the green and gold and play like we know that he can.
Yeah, well, the QAU are certainly rubbing their hands together with glee because, ticket sales are doing well for the Quade return, but you're exactly right. They'd be hoping he will get distracted by the emotional baggage, but he's shown so far he's played beautifully within himself, hasn't he? There could have been an argument that he would go down to the Rebels, try and do too much, sort of that Quade of old where he tried to do the trick plays, etc., etc. But the notable thing has been the absence of that, and as you say, Googie's maturing as a bloke.
Yeah, he doesn't stand out as much because the 14 blokes around him are playing the way that they need to support that. That one-off stuff looked one-off because 14 other blokes were standing there like statues going, "All right, I didn't sort of expect that."
Yeah.
But the Rebels guys have clearly know how he's playing. Genny is clearly choosing when to give it to him early or take a bit more time off the ball to take the time away from Quade to then not have a decision process happening. So there's much more distribution happening. It's a great looking team, and I really do believe that the Melbourne Rebels are one of the best performed teams in the Super Rugby comp at the moment.
How good is it, though, having those two back together back at Suncorp. It doesn't matter what side. They could be turning out for the Sunwolves as a pairing. You wouldn't care. Like, those two created some magical moments, not just for Queensland fans in their time there, especially through 2011, but I think fans worldwide. They were just electric.
And another budding little bromance that doesn't get probably the attention, but is really effective for the Rebels, is the 10-12 Quade and Billy Meeks, who apparently they're tight and they're looking that way on the field too.
The forward pack for the Rebels. I mean, that's great. No one's talking about them, and that's the perfect place to be for a forward pack. You know, I sort of got used to that because no one talked about anything I was doing in the forwards. But that's genuinely what you do. Head down, get the ball to Genia and Quade in as good a condition as you can. And then away you go, you're a chance.
Righto. Speaking about heading in one direction, we're all heading north to Newcastle this weekend for the Waratahs match up against the Sunwolves and Newcastle. Newcastle is also the hotbed for some unbelievable rugby talent that we've seen across the years, guys. A perfect little segue into a guy that we'd like to take you back and throw back to, Steve Merrick.
Merrick, the country captain, look at him go!
Steve Merrick was playing for the Singleton Bulls, known as a very handy country footballer, played for country, was promoted up into the New South Wales team, I believe we're talking 1995, for a handful of matches, went on tour to New Zealand with the Waratahs, did so well, Bobby Dwyer plucked him out of that team and put him in the Wallabies for 2 games against New Zealand. And before you know it, this was at the birth of professional rugby. Good could tell us more about that era, but he decided, no, I don't want to play professional rugby. I'm going back to Singleton to drive a truck. What a great story.
It's unbelievable. And you were there with him.
Must have been a nice truck.
The outset.
It was pretty blinged
Like
up.
to see that truck.
What about
Pulled him away from Test rugby.
Yeah, but you played with him.
I did play with him. I didn't know who he was at the time. We played a Barbarians match before the MCG Bledisloe score fest from Matt Burke in '98, when Australia beat New Zealand and won the Bledisloe. And then we were the curtain raiser, and back in the day the old model of the Barbarians was you don't really see each other until 3 minutes before the game, and you're expected to whip together a game plan and away you go. And I'm rocking into the stadium, and there's this bloke standing outside the change room entrance having a cigarette, and had a bit of a black mark across his nose and that. And I thought, oh yeah, groundsman there just wanting to get a few autographs or something. I sort of gave him a bit of a nod and walked past.
Did you give him an autograph?
No, he didn't ask, but I still gave it to him. So Steve Merrick's got my autograph. And I'm sitting in the change rooms, and this bloke stubs the cigarette outside the door. I'm starting to blow up a bit because the smoke's coming into the change room. And he sits down across from me and starts taking his kit off. I'm thinking, oh, this is getting interesting. The groundsman's coming in here to cut some shapes around. And reaches, puts it back, gets into his locker and puts on the number 9 jersey and goes out and scores 1 million points and runs around every bloke on the field. It was fantastic.
He was unreal. So he managed to displace George Gregan from his starting spot, two Test caps, and then just said, I'm done. Professional rugby ain't for me.
Sydney life wasn't for him, wanted to go home. And the great quote is, he was asked why. He said, I want to live in a place where you can get 10 overs in on the road before a car comes. And,
so good.
What a great story.
10 schooners in too, probably.
100%. So no doubt Steve Merrick will be there with us on the weekend up in Newcastle, one of the greats, and he'll be fronting up, I think, with the Classic Wallabies going forward.
Yeah, he's come across. We've been at a few events with the Classic Wallabies now, engaging rural Australia particularly, and there's a bit of a game coming up in Rockhampton soon, Townsville, Rockhampton, in July, a week before the Wallabies v Argentina, and Steve Merrick has put his hand up to play in that game. He probably doesn't know that yet, but he is going to put his hand up.
Maximum minutes.
I'll provide a pack of Winnie Blues, mate.
He came and visited you in Orange, was that right?
He came, so he heard we were in Orange, and we did a bit of a thing that we do there, and then we finished, and we're back at the pub having a beer, and everyone's sort of telling lies about how good they were. And Steve Merrick walks in, and he just arrived. I said, mate, what are you doing? How are you going? He said, yeah, good to see you again. Can I have another autograph? And then says, mate, I heard you blokes were in Orange. I jumped in the car and we just wanted to drive across and say good day. Brought his daughter, introduced her to everyone, and then an hour later said, catch you later, I've got to get back. I'm back in the truck tomorrow morning, so I've got to go home.
Fantastic.
10-4 big buddy. You know that's what he's pumping out as well. Yeah, too
great
good. Okay, so that's Steve Merrick. He is a smaller figure on the field as a scrum half. Another guy who cuts a, what's the best way of describing it? He's quick. He is not as tall as many that he would have gone up against. Austin Healey. Now, I've got to give this little yarn some context. Last week on our Fox Sports show Kick On, Goog told the story of how he managed to single-handedly defeat the British and Irish Lions in the third and final decider, 2001.
Everyone kind of knows that story, though.
I know. Well, I don't want you to retell that story.
I'm not going to.
But around that, Goog, there was a lot of chat coming from Austin Healey, the little flyer from England. In the lead up to that game, he referred to you as a plank, amongst other things. Now,
And a plod.
And a plod. What is a plod?
And an ape. I don't know.
No, but
I don't
what's
know
a
what
plod?
a plod is. I think it's like a really handsome 6'8" guy that plays for Australia. I'm pretty sure that's what the definition is.
Not too many plods getting around. But in the wash up of that, because it's gone viral, I think it's fair to say Goog's clip of how he celebrated his selection in that test has gone viral. These are some of the people that have chimed in off the back of seeing that. Off the top of my head, Brian Habana, John Schmidt, two South African greats, a bunch of others from the world of rugby as well, and
Dalai Lama. He's got reception. He's got reception up there.
The rugby Dalai Lama. So Gunga Lunga. So he don't try and throw me big hit of the Lama long. So what's happened though is there's been a bloke stirring the pot saying he wants to see a charity fight between Goog and Austin Healey to settle this spat once and for all. So right now, Goog, we'll give you the floor. You can call out Austin Healey and just
Well, he also
give it the
said
berries.
that you'd only require sponsorship for the soles of your boots.
And you need a pillow sponsor. He said you need a pillow sponsor.
Kilos.
You got to drop 50 kegs to take on Austin Healey, the former English flyer.
It's very
And
heavy.
pundit, rugby pundit. So the barrel of the camera is yours, Goog, just to return fire.
Well, I thought that midget boxing was banned, so I'm going to have a look at the rules here. I'll need padding for my kneecaps. My shadow weighs more than Austin, and I would hate to pull him away from his day job in the garden, so he'll have to take his red hat off and get in the ring and see how he goes.
Is there any danger of some of those hair plugs coming in?
Yeah, well, he said I had to drop 50 kilos. I said you'd have to grow a foot to make the height limit. So we'll see how we go. It'd probably be the first time he's allowed to get in and do anything, because he's had a whole life of being turned away from every water slide and amusement park in the world, not meeting the height requirement. So we'll see, Austin. Get back on the plane that you went home on before I won the third test, and you got to watch it and hear about it when you landed back at Heathrow.
Can I chime in on Austin's behalf here? I'm happy to help you gain 50 kilos as well, so that you can come up a number of weight classes to take on Goog as well, buddy. I'm happy to help, because if there's one thing that we can probably come together around, it's getting that match to happen.
Well, you'll have to
Tokyo. Let's do it in Tokyo around the World Cup.
We'll have to get it cleared by Snow White first, but we'll see how we go.
That's a wrap from our first ever Rugby Nation. Hope you enjoyed being along for the ride. Don't forget you can catch all the Rugby Cross Weekend all on Fox Sports or Rugby.com.au. And if you feel like it, get along to a game, because this weekend is going to be huge.